All right. Today is April 2nd, 2024. This is Sylvia Marshall, the archivist at the Virginia War Memorial, interviewing for the Oral History Project. Mr. Johnson, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. Could I get you to state your full name?
James Patrick Johnson,
And can you tell us what branch of the military you served in
Navy.
and the years you served?
It's 45 to maybe 47 or something like that. On my discharge, I can't remember dates necessarily.
And what was the highest rank you achieved?
I was motor machinist, mate, second class, what's known as the Black Gang.
All right. So could you tell me about when you were born and where you were born?
Right, I was born in a little town in Alabama called Helena. It was about 25 miles south of Birmingham, and a tornado came through the town in 1933, and I was the youngest of 7 children. And after the tornado, we were outside there. After the tornadoes and the clouds started getting real black again, the black man grabbed me and took me up to a school, which was a brick structure, and that's about all I remember about that. And then my mother died in 1933, and right before the storm, which was in 33. And then I guess 3 of us boys went into a Presbyterian orphanage in Talladega, Alabama. And of course my sister, let's see, this, I don't know what it was, but anyway, something to do with the government came through at the town, and so one of my sisters talked to him. He said he'd to have his secretary get in touch with my sister, Madam A, and get her a job up there, which she did at 23 years old. And she took 3 of us boys out of the orphanages and raised us,
What was it like growing up in D.C.?
In D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
it was really nice, because back in those days, Washington was just like a small southern town, And well, I don't know how my sister did it, because she didn't make that much money, but we had a good life, all 3 of us boys. And the oldest of the boys was a little wild, so he went in the Navy and was drinking one night and hit an officer, so he got a bad conduct discharge. And then when the war came along, he wanted to get back in the worst sort of way. And here again, my sister went to all the congressmen and everybody else and finally got back in. And he was in the Navy and aerial torpedoman. And I say, I've had such a wonderful life, I really have.
In around the 1940s, what was Washington like on the eve of World War II?
It was like a small southern town, but when my sister brought us up there, we always had an apartment someplace, generally in a nice section of town. And I can remember a restaurant used to be down on the waterfront called Hogate's, and the meals were very, very reasonable, so we used to go there if we ever went out to eat. And of course, my sister always cooked for the 3 boys. And but the first apartment we were in, they had a black janitor and his wife. They lived in the basement, but he was such a good man. His wife did, laundry for people, and but if they'd go away or something like that, I'd take over his duty. I'd fire the furnace and take up the trash and all like that. And but let's see. Well, we probably had 2 or 3 different apartments we moved in. Well, every summer I'd go back to Alabama. How I ever got the train fare and all like that, I don't know. But I had a brother-in-law and the younger sister, they had a dairy farm down there. And that was back in the days before pasteurization, you know. So when I'd go down in the summertime, I'd go on a milk route with them sometimes, and they'd deliver milk to restaurants and home delivery and all that kind of good stuff. And then, of course, that brother-in-law, I think he went into the Seabees, I believe. And but it's hard to remember a lot of things. You know, you had so many experiences over your lifetime. But
I'm curious about, where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
oh, that was unbelievable. You know, I think we heard about it on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, you know, back in those days, you didn't even realize it was a Pearl Harbor or anything like that. But and of course, once the war started, as a kid, and there were 3 apartment buildings that lived together, and I was a junior air raid warden. You know, have to go around at night and make sure everybody had shades down and all like that, because it always concerned. You know, you just didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. And about a block away from us was Rock Creek Park. And I remember they had big searchlights over there. They put them up over there, you know, for if, and of course, I don't know why, but anyway, they were there. And we also went to a church on the corner. It was a Presbyterian church. And let's see, I'm trying to think when I guess maybe I was born in Alabama, we know that, and was in Alfred, and then, of course, when the war came along, the brother just older than me went as a paratrooper in Europe, and
can I ask your brother's name? What was your brother's name that was the paratrooper?
John Henry Johnson.
Ah. So he was the paratrooper, and then you had another brother that was also in the Navy.
Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was my oldest brother. No, Connors. Connors was in the Navy. He's the one that got a bad conduct discharge. And then after the war started, he tried to get back in the Navy. He couldn't. But then my sister, Madam May, went to see politicians and all like that, and finally got him back in. And then he was an aerial torpedoman during the war. And then my oldest brother, I think he was in the Navy too.
And what was his name?
George Johnson, yeah.
So 3 of your brothers served during World War II.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody wanted to get in the military, you know.
Mm. And before I get into that, how did you become a junior aerial warden as a kid?
Well, of course, you know, we were so concerned that they might come to this country with anything, and they I think up in Washington State or something like that, they did do some damage, I believe. But anyway, probably every neighborhood had you know, somebody that did the same thing, where was a head of the thing, and I think you had an armband or something like that, and you'd go around at night and make sure everybody's shades were down and all like that, so no light could come out.
And then when did you end up joining the Navy? What year was that?
It was January of 1941.
could you tell me about, joining the Navy and what was that like for you?
Well, it was something different, I was just a country boy. But anyway, at Bainbridge, Maryland, which was a big Navy training center, I went there for boot camp. And I think an 8-week boot camp or something like that. And then I went down to Biloxi, Mississippi to engineer school or something like that. And I guess then shipped out. And afterwards, a couple of days, the war ended. So they really had a shipload of people. They really didn't know what to do with us, So that's when I ended up.
You have a new message.
That's
Oh.
that thing says that all the time, and I don't know how to get the messages. But well, let's see. I lost the train of thought again.
Oh, you're fine. I was actually going to back up to when you were in Mississippi with engineering school.
Right.
What sorts of skills did you learn while there?
Well, mostly mechanical stuff, working on machinery or whatever. And
And then from there, that's when you shipped out to Okinawa.
right, we moved out of San Francisco on a troop transport, and that's when the war ended after we see a couple of days, and they really didn't know what to do with us. And I guess maybe they ended up on Okinawa. Had to get it off the ship. So anyway, that's where I met my buddy George Tolles. Well, matter of fact, there's a bunch of Seabees, and I bumped in with them. Wasn't assigned anything particular, but this one guy took me on the. I was so young, and he was a little older. Showed me a couple of Japs he had shot, and then we went over to the island Aishima, I think it was, where the war correspondent, I forget who it was killed. Ernie
Pyle?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a war correspondent. They had a monument for him over there,
Mm.
And but anyway, I don't know how long I was on Okinawa, and then maybe then. They had LST was in dry dock at the time, so I was assigned to that. You know what LST is?
Those landing
Crab
ships.
Tank. It was, well, I've got pictures of them all around,
Yeah, like out there with the.
Right. But anyway, brought that thing back to the United States. And of course, I was on what they call a minority cruise, and you had to stay until you were 21. And of course, once the war was over, all these guys are getting out and all like that. So anyway, let's see. Well, I had run into my buddy George Tolles on Okinawa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I guess after that, I came home on leave. And then after I went back, I think I was going to another island. Let's see, what's the name of the island? Is on that.
I don't believe Guam.
Maybe I think I'd been to Guam, I believe. This Manus, and I stayed there the rest of my military career, and I was on we had a garage there, and I worked on military vehicles and all like that, And by that time, I was probably You know, of course, when you went in, you were a seaman, then you went to fireman, and I think I was probably a fireman's first class there, and that was, you know, just one stripe, and I think it took a test while I was there, and got promoted to a second class. What did they call it? Oh, a second class motor machinist mate. And that we worked on engines or one thing or another, and of course we brought this LST back to this country, and on the way back we stopped at Pearl Harbor. I remember that, and there was a restaurant there. I'm sure you the menu of that restaurant. This restaurant was P.Y. Chong's, but just look at the prices on inside.
Let's see here.
But that's one of a few mementos I just had to keep.
75 cents. Or you can get a chicken dinner for $3.50, a steak dinner for $3, and lobsters for $3.50.
Crazy, but you know, I just had to say that menu. But it was I don't know what he was, P.Y. Chong, maybe Chinese or Japanese or whatever. But
Is this Chinese food?
that was at Pearl Harbor on the way back to the States.
How was Pearl Harbor at that time?
Do what?
So how was Pearl Harbor at that time,
Well,
at the end of the war?
Well, they saying this was near the end. Well, matter of fact, the war was over, but it was like just like any other city, you know, if my recollection is right. And of course, you were in with a bunch of guys, and you were right close maybe at that time, but after a while you couldn't recognize them if you saw them even.
And
Well,
what was your favorite part of the job that you were doing, whether you were in Okinawa or Pearl Harbor?
Well, it was being a mechanic, like an automobile mechanic, anything, any machinery or anything like that you worked on. And as far as it went, you know, I enjoyed what I was doing.
Speaking of food, going back to when you were first stationed in Okinawa, what types of food were you eating there?
Well, regular food, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know for breakfast, they, you know, SOS. I don't know if you ever heard the expression.
Yes.
But anyway, I love cream chip beef on toast, which is, but this wasn't cream chip beef, it was a little hamburger in a sauce like that, you know. But and of course, you always had pineapple and canned stuff and all that kind of good stuff, you know.
And then you still kept in touch with your sister Maddie
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
with the female.
Yes, you see, she stayed in the apartment, and she was so good. I tell you, when I think of the sacrifices she made, I feel ashamed of myself because she really did, you know. And she was such a good person to take us and raise us. And you know, she was a strict disciplinarian too. You know, if we did anything wrong, I remember one time we were in the apartment, and you know how kids would mess around. So Johnny pushed me, and it was a chair like this, and I went back like that, and the lamp went back and broke a window. Well, you know what she did? She told a price to Johnson, says, "You get that fixed, and I'll make sure these boys pay for it." And we did too, you know. But I tell you, she was really, you didn't appreciate her at the time. But when you think of the sacrifice that she made for us boys, it was just incredible.
Did you ever run into any of your brothers, the ones that were in the Navy?
Let's see. It seems kind of like I did. And I don't know if it was George or somebody in the Pacific someplace, just for a day or something like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but like, of course, Johnny saw a lot of action, and so did Connors. Connors was an aerial torpedoman, and they, you know, torpedo on the plane, and they dropped the torpedoes to sink a ship or whatever. But you know, you never discussed this with them after the war, when we got back into civilian life. Yeah, and you know, there's so much I could have learned if I just talked to them, but I didn't.
Speaking of the end of the war, could you describe where you were and what the atmosphere was like when you heard about the end of World War II?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure I was on a ship when the war ended.
Mm.
And just, you know, you heard about it there, but, and of course, you were happy because you knew that you wouldn't have to be in any action or anything like that, you know. And that was before we got to Okinawa, you know, and I know it was on Okinawa and Guam and I think Saipan, but I can't remember exactly the details or anything like that.
Doing the same thing, you're working with military vehicles and
Right.
the mechanical.
And you know, Manus was a big supply place during the war, and they had a bunch of Jeeps there, and I bought a surplus Jeep, and they crated it up for me and shipped it back to San Francisco, and I had friends in the West Coast. They picked the Jeep up for me and kept it until I got discharged, and then another guy and I got it, and I had a partial top put on because it was cold weather, you know, and the Jeep just had one piece of it. But anyway, we drove that thing back from back to Alabama, and then I left the Jeep down there with one of my brothers because he didn't have any transportation. And then after a couple of years, maybe I went down to pick it up, and this other boy, a buddy of mine, Jack Waters, we went in the Navy at the same time. And so we went down, picked the Jeep up and drove it back to DC. And when I got married, my father-in-law had a new Chevrolet, so he let me take the Chevrolet on my honeymoon, and he kept the Jeep, you know, to get his working back. And but anyway, I kept that Jeep for a long time, but after I got married and all like that, I needed some money, so I sold the Jeep, you know. I wish I still had it.
Oh man. And so getting into that, when you were discharged, could you tell me about transitioning back into being a civilian, meeting your wife?
Well, I don't know about, I can't remember necessarily exactly when I got discharged. I know I got discharged on the West Coast, you know, and got my certificate and all like that. But of course, when I first went overseas or whatever, you know, I told you I got a Dear John. And,
Yes.
And I met that girl one time after that, because where we lived, there were 3 apartment buildings there, and then there was a circle down in about a block away where the streetcars used to come and turn around. But anyway, over the years that had been turned into a grocery store. So I met my first love there, but you know, just said hi and bye, you know. But then, well, here again, over the years, this boy in Washington, they had a place down in King Queen County, which was down here on the river. So we went over there one day fishing or whatever, and so my wife's name was Helen Bird Gatewood. So she fixed breakfast for us one morning, you know. It upset her parents, but she didn't care about that. But anyway, I fell in love with her and had her for 60-some years, you know. And I miss her every day still. That's a picture over there. She was just as, she was too good for me, really. And, but anyway, life goes on, you know. But I could never love anybody else like I loved her.
What year were you married?
Huh?
What year were you married?
I think 1948, I believe. I was living in Washington, and we were married in, let's see, I think in Richmond. I think it was the New Bridge Baptist Church. And of course, that church that her family had been going to for years and years, it was in Sandston. And on the honeymoon, we went to someplace called Shenandoah River Lodge. And it was very inexpensive at the time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any money. But anyway, when you stop and think about it, it's right funny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and of course, and we were married for 7 years before we had the first child. And then another 7 years we had the other child. I had 7-year itch, you know. But I tell you, I have two wonderful sons, they really are. Particularly Jimmy, you know, of course Jimmy's a retired school teacher and he has more free time. And matter of fact, this past Easter, David's daughter and her boyfriend came pick me up and took me down to the house. They lived down in New Kent. And then we went to church that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to somebody else's house for dinner. But you know, I've just been so blessed all my life, you know.
What was your civilian career?
I beg pardon?
What was your civilian career?
Okay. Of course, when I got out, jobs were hard to get. And I worked for the Census Bureau for a while in Suitland, Maryland. And these two ladies used to come by and pick me up, you know, still a young guy, and take me to work and bring me back. And I can't remember their names anymore, but then after that one day I went down to the telephone company, CNP, Chesapeake and Potomac Telephone Company at that time, and got hired as a cable splicer's helper. That's where you put the cables together, you know. Everything's so different today. But anyway, I worked for a telephone company for around 33 years. A little over 33 years. But back in those days, it was a good company to work for. And of course, we had a union, and the union got a lot for us. And of course, that's where I retired from too. And after I retired, I've never worked a day, you know, really worked. I volunteered for a lot of stuff, but I never ever had another job. And I can't remember just what year I retired, and I think it was maybe 84 or something like that. So I've been retired for a long time.
Did you join any veteran organizations?
I did the American Legion, and I'm still a member of that down in Sandston. It's a good organization, but of course I can't participate in anything anymore because I don't drive. And but every year, like Sanson, they put on a big parade, you know, and I used to participate in that. And there's a cemetery called Seven Pines, and every year we put the wreaths down there and put the flags down one thing or another, you know. But I used to. I don't do it anymore.
And what other, well, let me ask this question. With your Dear John letter, did anyone else of the men that you served with, did they also receive any, or was?
I don't think so. But the thing about it was, it really upset me because she says, you know, in the letter I explained everything. And I don't ever remember getting the letter. That's the thing that really screwed me up, you know, because she was such a cute little girl. And I dated her for a long time as a teenager in D.C. But tomorrow's always better than today.
That's true. Then you mentioned running into your friend George in Okinawa, and then you also mentioned an older gentleman that you were acquainted with. Did you make any other friends, any other mentors?
Well, at the time, you know, you had all kind of friends, you know, when you're serving any place. But then you soon forget them. I know there was, I don't know where it was, but anyway, this older guy wanted to borrow some money, so I loaned him some money. And of course, once we left it, but I had his address. I wrote to him one time and asked him, I need the money, but I never got the money. But you never know, you know.
I know I'm butting into your lunchtime a little bit, but I just want to ask, you know, do you have any other events or memories that jump out at you from your time in the service during World War II?
Not necessarily, because, you know, during the actual war, I was still in the States up until I went through boot camp and all like that, and they were shipped out, and then the war ended. Mm-hmm. And that's when I ended up on Okinawa with my buddy George Tolles. And but all those people are gone now. So all those folks are gone now. I can't, because, you know, I kept up with a few guys, but they've all passed now.
And you're 98 years old?
Do what?
So you're 98?
97.
97 years old. Oh, okay.
In January I'll be 98.
And I guess my final question would be, what is something that you're the most proud of during your time in the Navy?
I don't know that I have any particular time I'm most proud of. I was just proud to serve my country, you know. And but, you know, it worries me today, our country, and particularly this guy's running for president, that was president.
Mm. What sort of advice would you give a young person that is looking to join the military or looking to join the Navy?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, things have changed so much, you know, because, you know, when I went in the Navy, you know, when you get your issues, your clothes and all like that, you had the hammock. You stretch that hammock out, mm-hmm. and you pack all your clothes in there. And then you had a sea bag, and you put the sea bag down between the thing and lace the thing up. And it was really heavy, but you had everything you could ever need right in there, you know. And I often think about that because things have changed so much, you know. But that thing was heavy. But you always had your sleeping gear and everything right there, all your clothes and everything.
And was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we ended the interview? Any final stories?
I can't think of anything. I think I've had some wild experiences, you know. Just like someplace that we went out on the captain's gig one night, and I can't remember where this was, but of course I was a young guy, and we went out at nighttime, you know, on this boat, and it was.
You have a new message.
They say that all the time, and I don't know how to get the message. I don't think it's really any message, but they say it out every 5 minutes, I think.
Ooh. Gives you a jolt a little bit.
Right.
But you were saying you were on the ship.
Do what?
You were telling the story how you were on the ship at night. Y'all had one.
This wasn't a ship. It was just a captain's gig. It was a fast motorboat. And so this guy took us out one night just cruising, you know, and I don't know what island that was or whatever, or what I was even included.
All right. I think that was the end of my questions.
Alrighty.
If you had anything else you wanted to add?
I showed you my discharge, right?
Yes.
All right. But I tell you, I'm mighty proud of my service, and that's just the thing of my discharge. You know, it's just an old copy. I made several copies of it because I think one time I got a telephone number off there or something to call to get my medals, and I just forgot about it. And then one day they came in the mail.
There it is, Manus. All right, Mr. Johnson. Well, I can't thank you enough.
Well, I wish I could be more of a help to you, but
Oh no, your story is interesting, and I think your family also like hearing about it.
I'm sure they would, you know. But unless some reason would come up, you never discuss it. But I just wish I got more information from Johnny Arcanos, because they both saw a lot of action, you know. And their pictures are out there. I don't know if you noticed them or not.
So those were your brothers?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I thought they were just friends.
Oh, no, they're both my brothers. And however, we had a picture of them together, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I stop and think about it, you know, they talk about this PSD or whatever. Well, you know, after World War II, guys didn't get treatment like that. So both of those boys had problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, marriages or one thing or another, or drinking or whatever. But I loved them anyway.
And I noticed a lot of planes.
I beg pardon?
I just noticed the plane, the model plane you have up there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I wanted so bad to get into the Navy Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I was so dumb, you know. I didn't have the education or the ability to do it. But this one boy went in with at the same time, Jack Waters, real good friend. We both, I think, went down to it at the same time. But when it came to do the Morse code, I never even thought about the Morse code, but he got it down pat, you know. So that's the reason I didn't get in that. And I think he was down in Mississippi or someplace. But he was such a great guy. And after the war, he went into automobile insurance business. So I had my automobile insurance with him, you know. And he and his wife had a condo up in Ocean City, Maryland, after the war, and because he made good money, so we used to go up there about once a week and rent a place from him.